Well, we are moving on 12 o'clock, guys. I had to second layer black paint these because I had some blue undercut showing. So these are drying nicely. The stippling turned out very nicely, looks very natural, diverse pattern, so it worked out really well. I'm quite pleased with it. There's gonna be a big lake on here too when I go to John's tomorrow. Great, I'm shaking. So, and if you would have told me, you know, today at around noon when I talked to John, that to get just this stippled, get these cut out, carved out, lined, burned, painted, and have these cut out, shaped, sanded, and base painted, and that's all I would have done in, what, about 11 hours? I'd have said you were on drugs. I would have guessed exactly what I guessed, which I told him about 5 hours. But the crazy thing is I've been able to actually move from thing to thing to thing to thing to thing, and I've had no downtime until now, of which I was going to alter it, and I still am going to alter it, but I'm going to turn this into a little bit of a ramble and a little bit of a teaching thing. What I'm going to do is a technique that I call, instead of dry brushing, it's brush drying. So, here, I'll flip you around and you can look at my ugly mug. What that is, quite simply, whenever you're working on a piece, and that piece, you need it to dry faster than it's drying, for whatever reason, which is pretty common with me. All I'm going to do is I'm going to take a brush that's just dry, and I'm going to take a piece of terrain that's obviously, you know, wet. I'm going to try to get some light to glare off of it. You might not be able to tell it, but it is wet. And I want to get to the point where I can dry brush this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my dry brush and literally dry brush the piece. Which, what it's going to do is it's going to break up that surface tension. Ew. There does come a point where it gets a bit tacky, which this is actually at. And then you don't want to do this. Because what that does, you can dab at it. That's okay. You can dab at it. But if you physically brush, it's going to pull lines across the piece where the individual bristles are. And you don't want to do that. So I'm using a different technique. What I'm doing right now is actually what I was doing just actually not too terribly long ago. And that's stippling. But this is kind of in reverse. This is stippling to get the piece to dry. What I'm doing is I'm breaking up the surface tension of the paint and creating a greater surface area, and I'm dabbing up extra amounts of paint on this, and I'm brushing it off. Okay? So that's the technique I'm doing here. Usually if the piece is really wet, you can literally dry brush it. But anybody that's worked with paint knows that paint at a certain point it becomes tacky. And then you really can't do much with it. I'm able to do this because I'm working with such a rough structure. So I'm not messing the texture up by dabbing at it because the structure's already looks like it's been dabbed at. So I'm just going to hit this up. It is going to take a little bit of extra time to dry. So I will actually have a tad bit of downtime. But it's hard to believe that up until this point I've really not had any downtime. I would attribute that to mostly, you know, terrain making for that year period of time up until I got recently hired. Because it's a staging thing. You learn how to stage things so there isn't so much downtime. Like, you know, you have things gluing and then you paint, and then by the time you're done painting, the glue's dry. Well, if the glue's dry, then you can spray paint it. Well, while it's drying from the spray painting, you can start to dry brush, you know, the glued stuff or whatever. You just keep cycling, cycling, and cycling, and cycling. And that's... I hate... I hate talking myself up, because it's really amateurish, but if there's something that you want to do, you want to become good at this. Because terrain making, there is a lot of downtime. And mastering your downtime is very important, especially if you're trying to pull any kind of profit out of this, guys. So always, always, always stage your work. Always, you know, when you know, try and think 2 to 3 layers out. Basically, I think of it along the lines of my glue time, my paint time, and my plaster time, because all of those need time to dry, and it's a fairly sizable amount of time. Whereas when you start dry brushing things, they dry almost immediately, you know, so, you know, that's the kind of stuff that you want to be doing while the glue, the plaster, the paint, the base layer of paint is drying. And always remember, the greater amount of surface area, and by that I mean the depth of your surface area, the longer it's going to take to dry, because you're going to get all those high points create little valleys, and those valleys fill up with paint, and the deeper the paint is, the longer it takes to dry. It's just plain old physics. But I wanted you guys to pick up I wanted to get some techniques across to you guys, especially the ones that have been really faithful over... I mean, some jobs, they're jobs. They're not, there are parts of jobs that are not super sexy. The parts of jobs that I find a lot of gratification in is like your highlight dry brushing, when you're really getting the piece to pop, and building your great big core structures that you're going to be building onto. You know, and then there's parts of the job that's you know, kind of like you know, watching paint dry, and you know, you don't want to spend hardly any time doing that. So cycle, cycle, cycle what you do. So these are almost dry now. These black ones here, I bet you they'll be dry in about 15 more minutes. And it's just after 12 now. And probably by the time I first coat and second coat these, then these will probably be dry enough that I can first coat and second coat dry brush this. And then when that's done, pretty much everything is done on my end. And then I'm off to John's, and then it'll be kind of cool, because you'll see what I've done, and then you'll get a chance to see how John arranges the stuff. Because too many people look at me and what I do kind of thing, and it's really not me. It's the customers, the people that get the models, it's what they do with it. I got a buddy out in New York named Andy, and I mean, Andy just comes up with some really awesome looking tables, and my terrain might only be a third of the terrain on there. It's how he uses all of his different terrain and fits it together to make, to me, a cool looking table is like a piece of artwork. And when someone can take a bunch of different things and put it together and get a unified work of art, just, it blows me away. So you're going to get a chance to see how John takes this and turns it into art. So I'm running out of time, so I'm going to let you guys go. This is probably going to be the last upload. So see you guys tomorrow morning. Love you. Bye-bye.